Right. Right. So, first question we have was the analysis of conflicts between the trade blocs and World Trade Organizations. Um, so my first question will be, what are trade blocs?
Um, aren't they groups of like countries that offer lower or more favorable like trading conditions between each other compared to outside of the trade bloc?
Yeah. And what is the World Trade Organization?
It's an intergovernment organization that is it like encourages trade liberalization and
Yes.
for people to
Yeah.
trade with
So
each other.
yeah, so it's encouraging the like things like the um removal of barriers, um and it's encouraging freer trade because like we've discussed before, this really benefits this can benefit countries, especially developing countries. It can encourage countries to um it can encourage countries to be compa to engage in comparative advantage and so on. So so what happens here is obviously trading blocks um is when so where am I? There we go. So like we've said, a trade agreement would be a trading block like customs union, common markets, where there's preferential trade between countries. So what we're saying is two countries, so let's say like the UK and China, will have an agreement that will ensure that the two countries in that trade area, there's no barriers to trade. So there will be like things like no tariffs, quotas, red tape, and so on. Yeah. So this is beneficial because it can encourage trade, but the World Trade Organization wants to not have trade blocks, but everyone just trade with one another. So we have trade liberalization, and that's non-discriminatory, so that it doesn't leave out some countries. Um, so the so basically these two conflicts with each other, in terms of integration and trade. So what do you think? So what do you think the potential conflicts are?
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
In a trade bloc, I thought that it won't have to be a free trade area. Like they can impose tariffs, but they would just be reduced compared to.
So yeah, free trade, it depends. So it can be that you have free trade, or you can have reduced barriers. It just depends.
Okay.
Yeah. So uh, so why do you think there's going to be a conflict?
Because to become more integrated, you need to potentially trade more between like different countries.
Yeah.
And so
So,
if you're in a trade block, that limits the partners that you can trade with.
mhm, that's correct. Anything else? So, so one of the trades is that um, with trading blocks, you are essentially trying to trade with more favorable nations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the purpose is that you find a trading partner that benefits each other, and then obviously with like say an FTA or even a customs union, you place a external tariff on other countries. So what happens is this creates a level of discrimination. So the World Trade Organization, what they say is, so I'll just write it, put it here. So the World Trade Organization, their main principle is that if countries lower tariffs for one World Trade Organization member, it must lower them for the rest of them. Yeah. And that's because you want free trade between all countries and not just specific ones. So removal of so whereas in tr with trade blocks, you remove trade uh tariffs between the bloc, but you maintain tariffs against non-members. So you discriminate against the non-member countries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way you'd analyze it, these are kind of like the steps. So it would be within a customs union, for example, members enjoy zero tariffs internally. Non-members face a common tariff, which gives uh, bloc members an artificial competitive advantage. Um, so then trade will shift towards less efficient producers inside the bloc and reduces allocative efficiency globally.
Ali, are you writing on the whiteboard?
Yes.
I can't see it. I don't know if it's just me.
Can everyone else see? Yeah, Fizz can see. Asim, can you see?
Okay, I'll even rejoin.
Yeah, just try and rejoin and then I'll just wait for you to. Um, right. So the other conflict that we have is what we call trade creation and trade diversion. So so a so a trade block basically can create trade, but also it can divert trade. So the efficient outcome is that um so so this is essentially the conflict is that a regional trade agreement can create trade because which can be the efficient outcome because you start trading more with countries that are nearby you and so on. And then the less efficient outcome is that you divert trade from less efficient you divert trade to less efficient countries. So an example is so when the UK was in the EU, one of the issues that they had was that they it was more efficient to trade with New Zealand when it came to things like meat. However, because of the trade block, it meant that the UK couldn't trade with New Zealand because there was a tariff placed on goods that are outside of the goods that are from countries outside of the trading bloc. So it meant that trade was being diverted into the trading bloc, which had a less efficient outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, does that make sense to everyone else?
I have a question. Sorry, what does preferential trade mean?
Um, which bit are you reading?
I'm near the top of it because I'm just writing it down.
Uh, preferential is just trade. You There's a preference in who you trade with.
Okay.
So a trading block will mean that you would prefer to trade people within the block. You would trade with people within the block than people who are outside. Yeah. So so this would just be our example of what trade divergence. So before the block, countries import from the most efficient global producer, but after they join a trading block, they shift to a higher cost block member due to having zero tariffs. Consumers will end up paying more than if they were under the global free trade. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So, do you guys have any questions or anything you want to go through in the last 40 minutes? No? No. So everyone's happy with studying and everything?
Other than like quantitative easing, what else do we need to know about financial markets?
Um, so, because obviously you do you do AQA, don't you?
Yeah.
So, have you had a look at the spec?
I've done the whole topic at school.
Mm.
But I'm just trying to remember what else was in it.
Hmm. So, I'll read you what it says in the spec for AQA. So, essentially, what you need to know is you need to know financial markets and the monetary policy. So, you need to know the functions of money, definition of money supply, and the dis this distinction between narrow and broad money, the difference between the money market, capital market, and the foreign exchange market, the role of financial markets in the wider economy. So how how financial markets interact with the rest of the economy. So inflation, growth, exchange rates, and so on. The difference between debt and equity, the inverse relationship between interest rates and bond prices. Um, and then you should be able to analyze a lot of stuff. What does it say here? Students should know ways that which firms raise finance, including selling shares, issuing corporate bonds, and students should know the terms coupon maturity in relation to government bonds. Then you need to know the difference between commercial and investment banks, the functions of a commercial bank, the structure of a commercial bank's balance sheet, the objectives of a commercial bank, the potential conflicts between these objectives, and how banks create credit. Uh, Then you have to know about the central bank and monetary policy, how that all works, the transmission mechanism, how Bank of England influence the growth of money supply. Then you have to know the financial regulations and what they are. Well, the role of the different regulators, why banks might fail, liquidity ratios and capital ratios, moral hazard, and systemic risk.
Could we go through like the difference between the markets, the money market, secondary market, like those ones, and how to raise money?
So the difference between money market, capital market, and foreign exchange market,
Yeah.
and then what was the other thing?
The bit about raising money, like selling shares and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry. Before you start that, can you give me like 2 minutes? Because I just want to finish writing that down and also follow what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Um, Asim, have you got any questions? Anything you want to go through? Okay. Fizz, have you wrote that stuff down? Or still need a minute?
Just 1 more minute, please.
Yeah.
Also, I was going to ask, you know how I don't know if this is in the same for the other boards, but for Edexcel,
Mm-hmm.
we have to do a case study for like two different countries,
Mm-hmm.
one developed and then the UK. What
Mm-hmm.
do I actually include in that? Because my teachers just told us to do one, but I don't really understand what I
Okay.
include in it.
So you basically the question will be about like the questions will be on say why um why one country is more developed than another, or the difference between them in terms of growth or development. So I would say you basically need to know key facts about like policies, like GDP, population, um, other measures, so like the Gini coefficient, um, just things that you can compare between the two of them and explain why um, one country has developed more than the other or something.
Does it have to be like a really detailed one? Because she's kind of, I don't really know what she said in the lesson,
So
but
is this for paper 3?
paper two, I think,
You paper 2, you just have to have gone at
or
2020.
paper
Say again.
or paper three. I think she said both, but
So
she
paper
was like,
3, so I think it might just be she wants you to basically know like key elements for your essays, because your paper 2 is same as paper 1 um where you've got section A where it's all short written answer questions, and then section B is your 5, 8, 12, 10 marker, 15, then a 25, and then a 25 at the end as well. So with your section A, sorry, with your paper 3, um It's just typically you just want to know because you get like for example, this is the question that was given. This was in 2024 paper three. So it said evaluate the microeconomic and macroeconomic effects of a high interest rate in Ghana or a developing country of your choice. So you can go with Ghana, right? Because I think the extract in that year is to do with Ghana. Or if you've researched another developing country, then you can use that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So would that mean that? Sorry, is the question gone?
Oh, sorry, I'll put it back.
Um.
So give me one sec, I'll get the question back for you. What you were saying?
I was just gonna say, so you know how you said interest rates? Does that mean that I need to know the interest rates for that country and how that affects it?
Um, no, it's just more so you wouldn't have to know what the interest rate for that particular country is. You just need to know like say if the interest rate was to increase, um, or if the interest rate is high, how would it affect everything? So obviously there would be um higher amount of saving, low spending. So maybe knowing like what the country's GDP is, how much consumption is a proportion of that GD of that country's GDP. What's that country's inflation rate? Have they had experiences of high inflation? Stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What country would you recommend to do?
Um, in terms of developing, like India, Brazil, Nigeria, are all really good countries to pick because there's a lot of information for them. Um, and then now you'd probably see like Vietnam. What's the other one? There's one more off. Yeah, I can't remember the other one, but just countries like that, which are in the developing space. And the reason for that is because there'll be so much information about them, um, and they will just be easy to remember as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Also, I was gonna say, oh, I forgot. So
Sorry.
it doesn't have to be detailed, like, because I do geography as well, and I know that each case study, like, you have to know so much for it.
Like I
Would that
always,
be on the same level?
so like with the evidence, I always say with in eco, like if you can remember like stats, perfect. But if you can remember the general gist of something, then that's fine. Like as long as like it doesn't, because the examiner might Google it, right? So you don't want him to Googling it, it's like completely false. Yeah. So for example, I could say like during 2008, the UK had a slump and was in a recession. That's completely factual. Yeah. Even though I've not said the actual underlying stat, it's completely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, I have quite a few questions about just the case studies in general because we don't cover them in like our lessons at school. You
Hmm.
know, for paper one, are we meant to know like companies and firms that um for paper for like for
Markets.
example, yeah, for
Yes,
markets and
I would definitely recommend that because if you get a case study where you don't know the market very well or there isn't that much information, then you're going to really struggle with your application marks and your evaluation marks.
okay,
So,
so
so I think um, last week we went through all the standard, like what markets you should always think about when you're thinking about a certain market structure. So oligopoly supermarkets should just be your go-to.
yeah,
Yeah. Think about monopoly, like you got companies like Google, Apple, Samsung. Um, when it comes to monopolistic, it's anything on the high street. Perfect competition, it should be your forex, agriculture markets. Yeah.
Yeah. So would that again be in the same level of detail as the country case study?
Um, in terms of like, so I will try and find. So last year I just made something for students because I would ideally you want to know like what's happening in certain markets. Uh, what did I call it? Macro examples, was it? Is it micro examples? Right. So, right. Can you see this?
Yeah.
So what I did was literally I would just go and for each of the big topics, just research stuff, and this would just be like my cheat sheet for certain things, so that you kind of know key facts and figures. So, for example, if you want to talk about negative externalities of smoking, the healthcare cost on um diseases related to smoking is 2.4 billion every year. So it's like stuff like this. When I go over to market structures, which um right, so like market structure. So here we've got regulation and then objectives of firms. Uh, so if you want a firm that was a revenue maximizer, then Spotify, that's what they did. Sales maximization, you've got Amazon. Growth and market share, you've got like Lidl as examples. Um, then satisficing, you've got the BBC. Perfect competition, like agriculture. So this is like just facts and figures that you could talk about. Forex exchange markets. Um, monopolistic. So we've got UK hairdressers. So low barrier to entry in 2022, over 45,000 salons operated across the UK. Independent coffee shops. There's now 8,200 independent coffee shops in the UK now, which are competing with Costa and Pret. So just kind of stuff like this is what I would like stuff I'd go and find. Does that kind of answer your question or
Yeah,
like
that did.
smart?
No, it did. Thank you so much.
Right. No problem. Okay. Right. Right, let's do your question then, Arishi. Um, right. So what's your understanding between the different types of markets? Just like a good general question to everyone. So what is the money market? What's the capital market? And what is a foreign?
I'm not sure, but isn't money markets like bonds and like money in general? And then capital is like all the assets that they own.
Mhm. So the way we're going to define the money market, it's short-term financial instruments. Yeah, so anything that basically matures within a year. So examples are like treasury bills, commercial paper, or certificates of deposits. So when we say certificate deposits, it's your deposits in the bank. Yeah? Are we happy with that?
What are treasury bills?
Um, so I'm trying to think of the best way to kind of easily explain this. So treasury bills is just like a government bond, but that only lasts for less than a year.
Okay.
Right. In terms of the characteristics of this market is that um all of the um all of the assets that are traded in this market are going to be low risk, very liquid, short-term maturity, and going to have low returns. They'll have low returns because you're not bearing much risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
So capital market is going to be the opposite. It's going to be long-term financing. So, or long-term investment vehicles. So this will be stuff like bonds and equities. When we say equities, we just mean shares. Yeah. And the purpose of these is for long-term capital formation and to support things like economic growth. And in terms of the characteristics, these are going to be more risky than the money market. They'll take much longer to mature, and there's a higher potential of returns. So you can see that there's an inverse relationship between risk and return. You know, because the risk is meant to be the reward. Sorry, the return's meant to be the reward for bearing risk. And then our foreign exchange market is just going to be the forex. So it's where currencies are bought and sold. The purpose is to help help facilitate international trade, because obviously if we're going to trade or purchase goods from abroad, we need to exchange our currencies, because you can't really go to France if you just go to Disneyland and pay using pounds. And they enable foreign direct investment, and they determine foreign exchange. Sorry, I didn't see your question. Can you go through contestable markets? Yeah, I'll go through that at the end. And yeah, they determine exchange rates. Are we happy with the different markets?
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. So, yeah.
Sorry, I have a question.
Mhm.
What does this relate to? Like, how would I use this in a question?
So you could have a question on it's more so like if the question asked you and said like the Bank of England is um hmm, um hmm, right, yeah, let's say the Bank of England is like it's more so right, so it's so that you understand the difference between the types of assets, right? So because we talk about bonds when the government sells bonds to generate money, yeah. And the reason why firms will purchase those bonds is one, because they will potentially give them a higher return than they would if they were just to um try and save or invest in the money market. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sorry. Why is this relevant?
So this is relevant because you need to understand how the financial sector works. Like this is like the level you need to know the different markets. You don't need to know any more than this. And it's because the foreign exchange market is different to the capital market. That's different to the money market. Yeah. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So the ones you're going to be more concerned on is going to be the foreign exchange market because we have diagrams for that. The capital market because when there is quantitative easing or quantitative tightening, and when governments sell bonds, that all takes place in the capital market. Yeah. And when we change the interest rate, that happens in the money market. Does that make sense?
Um, what was the foreign exchange market that relates to the exchange?
Exchange rates.
Yeah. So what diagram is that?
So last week in the year 12 question sec year 12 section year 12 session on the Saturday we went through the different exchange markets. So you got an exchange market when we have um a free exchange rate, so a floating exchange rate, sorry, a fixed exchange rate and a managed exchange rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were there diagrams for that, or am
Yeah.
I just
So I'll try and get.
because I remember I was in the lesson. I remember like the differences between them all. But I didn't
Mhm.
realize it was a diagram.
Yeah, we did some diagrams. So what had the date been last week? So the 7th. So these were the exchange rates. So it's just like supply and demand diagrams. So this would have been the example of a free floating exchange rate, and this is a managed exchange rate.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Back to. So you happy with the difference between the different markets?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So students should know that firms finance through issuing shares and issuing corporate bonds and borrowing from banks. So basically, um, there's a variety of ways that businesses um, can basically finance themselves, right? The first one is issuing shares. So does everyone know what a share is? Yeah, anyone want to tell me what a share is? Okay, so a share is basically purchasing ownership or like a stake in the business, right? So if you had shares in Microsoft, that means you own part of Microsoft, right? If you had one share, you still own part of it, even though you probably don't have enough to like vote. So what businesses will do is they will sell shares in order to generate capital. Yeah, so they will say, right, we'll give you one share in exchange for, I don't know, £1. Yeah. And the more shares you buy, the more obviously you're gonna have to pay. And the purpose of that is for the company to generate funds to invest in. And what you're getting in return as an investor is you'll receive dividends, so a proportion of the profits that generated. You'll get capital gains. So let's say you hold on to a share when you bought a share at a pound, and because of the demand and supply of the stock market, your share price is now £10. You've gained £9. So you could sell your share and make back £9. But also, if you've got enough shares, you have voting rights. So you could technically go to the AGM meeting, the board meeting every year, and decide what's happening with the business. Yeah, are we happy with that so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep it quite simple. The advantages of shares is that you're not obliged to repay capital. You don't have to give them dividends, right? You also have no interest payments, so you don't pay back any interest. The money just comes to you interest free. It improves liquidity because you have cash. And it reduces the chances of insolvency. So let's say when you like have a lot of debt, you might become insolvent where you don't have enough cash and you have to start selling assets. There's no risk of that when you have shares.
Wait, so,
Go on.
um, if liquidity is about how like having cash to hand, then what's the difference between that and solvency?
Insolvency is going to be where you basically are selling off assets to pay off your debt.
And so if you're solvent, that means you have no debt?
If you're solvent, yeah, or
Okay.
you've got enough cash to cover your debt.
Okay.
Yeah. The disadvantages of So the disadvantages of issuing shares is that there's a dilution of ownership and control. You're giving the ability for other people to vote. Shareholders may demand profit maximization. So linking back to the principal agent problem, a lot of these shareholders will expect dividends. That's going to potentially reduce like things like dynamic efficiency. And there's exposure to stock market volatility. So let's say you were selling shares for dead cheap, right? You sold them for £1, and now they're worth £10 in the stock market. You don't get any of that money. Yeah, it's traded between people. So let's say Arusha, you bought Apple for £1, Apple shares, and then you sold them to me for £10. You get all the £10. You don't have to pay that business any money because you've traded that share. So when you sell shares, it's a one-time thing unless you buy them back. Any questions? So, um, so equity finance is going to be more suitable for your bigger firms, basically. Um, that's when you would sell shares. You wouldn't sell shares if you just owned a small business because one, you probably won't be selling shares on the stock market. Two, your business isn't big enough for like really big investors to buy stocks and shares. So there's no point. Any questions on that? All right, I'll carry on. So the next one is issuing corporate bonds. So this is debt financing. So this is a corporate bond is like a loan. So similar to how we talked about government bonds, is you give a piece of paper to an investor which says you're going to pay them an interest coupon, and then the maturity date, so the year that the coupon, sorry, the year that it matures, you're going to pay them X amount of money that they lent you in the first place. Yeah. So it's no different to the government bonds. It's just this time it's coming from a business. So, in terms of the advantages, so it's going to be the advantages is that you have no loss of ownership. You're not giving away parts of the business to the investors. You're just borrowing money. The interest is tax deductible, so the interest can be seen as a cost. So basically, it can be written off as in your interest in your income statement. When it's predictable financing costs because you know how much you're going to pay every year in terms of fixed repayments. It's a fixed amount, and you know for sure how much when you're going to repay that last amount. So it's quite easy to predict. The disadvantages, it's mandatory interest payments. You have to pay them either yearly, monthly, or whatever. you're increasing your financial risk because you're borrowing money and you having to repay that back. So there's a likelihood of maybe defaulting, going in debt, insolvency, or even bankruptcy. And like it says here, failure to repay can lead to insolvency. So where you have to start selling off assets. So in terms of valuation, this will be bonds are going to be attractive when the interest rate is low because, like we said earlier on, there is a negative or inverse relationship between bonds and interest rates. And firms are going to be the bonds for firms are going to be more attractive if they've got a good credit rating. So there's a low chance that they're going to go bust. So if you was to buy bonds from, I don't know, your local corner shop, they probably wouldn't be as creditworthy as if you was to get a bond from your bank. Any questions on that?
No.
So our last one we have is borrowing from the bank. So you can just take a bank loan, directly borrow. So so a bank could borrow from another bank or from the Bank of England. Interest rate will be charged, and also you have a repayment schedule, so you have to pay every month part of the loan and part of the interest. So loans can be short term, long term, or you can have what we call an overdraft. The advantages, similar to a bond, it's going to be that you have full ownership still. You're not giving away parts of your business in exchange for money. Flexible arrangements are possible. So let's say you're struggling to repay, you can maybe extend the loan for longer, so you can have more time to pay it off. It's suitable for smaller firms because as a smaller firm, you might not be able to sell your shares in the stock market. The disadvantages is that collateral is often required. So does everyone know what collateral is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So collateral is going to be where when you take out the loan, the bank might say, right, we're going to attach this loan to the company premises. Yeah. So if you don't pay us the money, we'll just come and take the building. So obviously that's another issue in itself. And fixed repayments regardless of profit. So you could be losing money, you still have to pay them, and it can restrict your cash flow because you have to repay that money. So does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Any questions? Right. So I'll just go through this last thing. So I seem wanted to go through contestable markets. So can you guys tell me what you know about contestable markets?
Aren't those markets where there's the threat of entry from other firms? So then that
Mhm.
keeps the prices low within the firm. I mean, within the market. Because
It can do, yeah.
if they had higher prices, then the firms would be worried that other firms would enter the market and kind of just like undercut the firms which are already in the market, and then they would make supernormal profits and then just leave. And I think that's hit and run entry.
Yeah. Anyone got anything to add?
There's also low barriers to entry and exit.
Hmm? Has you got anything to add or happy with what's been said?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, have you got anything to add about contestable markets, or are you happy with what's been said so far?
Yeah, I'm happy with what you said.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, like we said, contestable markets are markets where there are low barriers to entry and exit, which mean firms can enter and leave the market freely without significant sunk costs. So even if So in this market, there can be one or many firms in this market. It's about the threat of competition, right? The hit and run. So they could basically join the market, enjoy the supernormal profits. Once normal profits are reached, they will leave the market. So, so what happens in this market is going to be that firms are going to enter this market if they see abnormal profits. So if there's supernormal profits, they will stay and basically undercut each other like they do in a perfect competitive market until the supernormal profits disappear. And then they will just kind of leave, right? Once we get to normal profit. So to deter entry, the incumbent firms, so these are the firms already in the market. Firms already in the market will use things like limit pricing to set prices low enough to discourage like other firms from joining. So all right. So what can happen is in a market. So the firm originally produces here at MC equals MR. This would be the cost. This would be the price. So we have supernormal profits. Yeah. So what would happen in this market is the new firms would enter the market and we would reach normal profits because they're all going to compete. They're all going to compete on lower prices. So we would be at this point here. So we've got price and the cost. We've got quantity 1. So are we happy with that so far? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a perfectly contestable market, firms can only, so in a perfectly contestable market, firms can only generate normal profits in the long run. Yeah. And this is the point where AC is equal to AR. And what you tend to find, I've not drawn it on this diagram, but what you tend to find is that firms will be productively efficient and allocatively efficient as well in the long run. So the key characteristics, like we said, in terms of barriers, there's going to be low barriers to entry and exit. And that will be because of low sunk costs, so they can leave the market quite easily. In contestable markets, you tend to find that there is access to information and technology. So they've got really good information. So new entrants have got access to good information and technology in order to like compete with incumbent firms. And there's the potential for hit and run. Yeah. So so what are the different so if you're an incumbent firm, what can you do to try and deter new entrants?
Sorry, what is hit and run?
Say again.
What is hit and run?
So anyone want to explain what hit and run is?
Where new firms kind of observe that the market's making supernormal profits. So what they'll do is that they'll enter the market because there's no barriers to entry. They'll make the supernormal profits, and essentially by them joining the market, it kind of reduces because it increases the market supply. They have to like reduce the price because they'll be able to undercut the incumbent firm, and um and that reduces until the market makes normal profits, and then they'll leave the market.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So it's just basically what we've just described here. So your new firms join the market. So if we think about what's happening in the market, supply of the good is going to increase, right? All the new firms, they're going to try and steal customers. They're going to lower the price, so the market price is going to fall. The market price is going to fall. So will our price. Yeah. And until we're at the point where we reach normal profit and we reach normal profit, and you're basically the firms that join temporarily, they leave the market because there is low barriers to enter and exit. Yeah. So they so these some of these firms might just be joining in just to enjoy the super profits and then leave. So what are the ways firms behave in a contestable market?
They can set the prices really low,
What do we call that?
limit pricing.
So they can use limit pricing. So this would be where they set the price greater than the average cost, but it's going to be still quite low. So if we was to draw this on our diagram, so we've got our marginal cost here. So our cost and our price, right? So we've said that normal profit is here, right? I'll just highlight that in red. Is it this level of Q? So what they're going to do is they might set the price, say it is instead here at blue, right? So this will be the quantity that they use instead. So I'll call that Q2. And the price will be here at P. And the cost will be where it hits the average cost curve. And here at C2. So we'll call those P2 and C2. So limit pricing is that they're setting the price, all right? So it's just above the average cost. So it's low enough to discourage new firms from entering the market because now you can see the supernormal profits. It's much smaller, right? So are you really going to join that market for that just little bit of supernormal profits? But also, because it's so close to the cost, if you get things wrong, you're going to make a loss. Yeah. So this is a way to discourage firms from entering the market. Yeah. Are we happy with that so far?
Yeah.
Right. And then what other ways have we got?
Predatory pricing,
Yeah, and what's predatory pricing?
where they set the prices really low to kick out the firms that enter the market.
Yeah, so what they're going to do is they're going to set the price below the average cost. And then you could argue in the short run, it's going to be that the price is going to be greater than the average variable cost, though. So in this diagram here, I'm going to draw it with a purple, and it might be that the price will be here in purple. So we've got P3, right, and where it hits the cost here is going to be C3. So we can see that the firm's making a loss. And basically, what's going to happen here is going to discourage new firms from joining the market because they're going to be like, oh, everyone's making a loss. We're not going to join the market. And once they get rid of those, in the long run, once they get rid of those potential threats, they just raise the prices back up to back here at P. Yeah. Any other ways they can behave?
They can heavily advertise.
Yeah. So they can use non-price competition. Or raise the barriers to entry. Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
So the last thing is that we know that if we have low sunk costs, this means that there's low contestability. Sorry, high contestability. And if there is high sunk costs, it equals low contestability. So that all makes sense.
Yep.
All right, perfect. That is everything. So any last quick questions before I go? Okay.